a growing citizens movement demanding an explanation of chemtrails.
And I talked to my NSA buddies at Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base, and Buckley, where I was actually their doctor taking care of the pilots flying and spraying the chemtrails. So I know it's real. If anybody says it's not real, they're full of it.
It's not the same as conducting some localized test for some defensive project. This is open air operations. It's not a test. This thing is in place.
It didn't start until about 1996. Exactly. And, growing up my whole life, a condensation trail disappeared, the 20 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. And now it can be in the summer at like 4,000 feet, and there's these big clouds behind jets. Some jets leave it behind, leave a trail behind them. Other jets at the same flight level, same altitude don't. And, instead of just getting into are they spraying us or what's changed the jet fuel or what's changed the atmosphere, there are tens of thousands of declassified admissions under different programs where different Pentagon programs, different agencies of the government have tested chemical, biological, and radiological agents on the American people.
Talking about this a few years ago was extremely dangerous. Now that we have YouTube and more social networking devices, such as even Rupert's MySpace, this is really getting out in such a way that they can't control it. They must just be really, if you can use the expression, shitting themselves over this, because they can't control people now talking about the elephant in the room, what is so obvious to all of us.
There's a feeling from that area that the states doing all of these weather modification programs might not be doing it for the benefit of the citizens of Texas and other states that they may impact as well.
Well, many of the planes that we're seeing here in Abilene will actually turn whatever they're spraying on and off right before our eyes. I mean, you'll see a plane up there flying like normal, and then all of a sudden it starts spraying. We've seen them fly off into the distance and then loop around and fly back again. These are not your typical planes with a preordained path destination from city to city. Someone needs to explain to me why do they stop traveling in one particular direction and then loop around and come back again. They perform this behavior so many times that we start seeing the tic-tac-toe grids in the sky. We're witnessing the giant X's. And I mean, Rosalind, when you and I grew up, these contrails naturally dissipated in a few seconds or perhaps a minute max. But these things expand, they grow bigger, and before you know it, the entire sky is overcast.
That's correct. And they are there all day. They do loop the loop around our county and our state. We follow them at times with spotters in different areas, watching the planes loop, come back around. And we know from the FAA records that the jets from commercial airlines fly in straight lines. And coming across our county, there aren't many, and they stay mostly in certain patterns. The jets that we see leaving the persistent jet contrails move in directions that normal jets wouldn't fly because it would use too much fuel and put them off schedule. And the jets that we see here do loops. We've got pictures of them looping the same X's and crosshatches. But I believe that some of that, not only are they looking for keeping something in the air almost all the time, but we feel that some of the markings are to mark the start and stop areas for their programs so that they can watch their experiments either from satellite or the ground.
do they want to keep this quiet? Why aren't they talking about this? Why don't they want us talking about it? And you can only come to the conclusion that they're hiding something.
Now, do you believe that this is a full-scale secret operation that includes not only the U.S. but Europe and the rest of the world?
Well, that's apparent because you can see the pictures from all over the world, and I get them constantly. Some areas are worse than others. The excuse for this is, number one, weather modification, number two, to save us from global warming, and number three, to save us from the terrorists. A lot of these programs, of which there are many patterns and which has been designated as wake vortex simulation carried out by NASA Langley Research Center, many of these operations and the patents go on to explain how if there is a biological attack by terrorists at some point, that these exercises and practices will, in a sense, save us with the spider webbery that comes down from the aerosol spraying, potentially gathering the chemical mass spray that could be sprayed on any given population. The problem with that is the terrorists don't have the means to deliver this. They don't have the access to deliver this over the American populace per se. And the only people who have been doing this, that is biological experiments on the American people, is the military themselves, which has been admitted from everything from Operation Shad to the spraying that happened in San Francisco, I believe back in the 60s and the 70s, that literally killed people.
Again, I may not be able to ascribe intent, but what I can say is that it is expected that there will be increased mortality as well as the potential of a huge host of unknown pathogens that we are subject to, and this is not based on speculation. There's a whole arena of biological research that we haven't even begun to touch on.
Could a strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government
found in our sample?
The official explanation here is that jet contrails are causing strange lines in the sky.
What affects variants in the body? Short-term exposure can lead to anything from stomach to chest pains. Long-term exposure causes blood pressure problems. Ryan addressed concerns by chemtrail researchers that barium could be meant to wear down a person's immune system.
You're talking about dominating our air supply without the human consent in a way that is difficult for many of us certainly to conceive, and certainly many of us refuse to accept it even in the light of sufficient and overwhelming evidence.
And the jets that we see here do loops. We've got pictures of them looping the same X's and crosshatches. But I believe that some of that, not only are they looking for keeping something in the air almost all the time,
After thousands of people complained something was new, something was wrong, the Centers for Disease Control now says it will launch an investigation into a strange new skin condition, no known causes.
This morning in Health Watch, Morgellons, a mystery illness that can make people feel like their skin's crawling.
It is a mystery straight out of the X-Files, but those who suffer from it will tell you it's painfully real.
Imagine feeling like your skin is literally crawling, that you're tormented at all hours. You can't even think straight. The condition is driving you crazy. But
a strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention.
Tonight, a community in the San Bernardino Mountains has a real mystery on its hands. The official explanation here is that jet contrails are causing strange lines in the sky, and that it's pollen making people sick on the ground. The Department of Health found a yellowish tint on a tissue submitted for testing. But, quote, there was no sign of any biological form, such as cedar pollen.
Well, Laura, the disease literally makes your skin feel like it's crawling, but here's the real scary part for us. Out of the entire country, the LA area has the highest percentage of cases.
Thousands of sufferers nationwide, but who seem concentrated in Texas, California, and Florida.
Report a higher than average number of patients who have these symptoms.
Just hearing their symptoms might make you feel sick.
It happened again last February, and calls began pouring into the local Alpenhorn newspaper.
And they had a tremendous upsurge of children that were not going to school at that time.
Pharmacist Ed Burrows says it is the most mysterious illness he's seen in 22 years on the mountain.
Imagine sweating beads of a black tar-like substance or pulling colored thread-like strings from sores all over your body.
A lot of eye infection problems, upper respiratory problems, nosebleeds.
Patients report feeling bugs crawling beneath their skin, sores that don't heal, dementia, extreme fatigue, and most disturbing, fibers that push out from open wounds.
The symptoms are very close to what's been reported, I think, generally. They typically describe a disturbing skin sensations such as itching or stinging or pins and needles. They have ulcers or a rash on their skin. Many of these are very difficult to heal. And they additionally, they report that they have foreign materials such as threads or fibers coming from beneath their skin.
Some patients actually gave us those fibers, so we had them analyzed against 100,000 known fiber samples, both natural and synthetic, that the FBI crime lab uses, Diane. Guess what? Not a match.
And, you know, it turns out until 9 years ago, the government had the right under U.S. law to conduct secret testing on the American public under specific conditions. Only a public outcry repealed part of that law, with some exceptions.
But could secret testing be underway yet again? Those who fear chemtrails could be secret biological or chemical testing on the public. Point to the 1977 Senate hearings in particular, which confirmed 239 populated areas had been contaminated with biological agents between 1949 and 1969.
Okay, I hope all of you heard that real loud and real clear. We're talking about the potential of chemtrail involvement with Morgellons disease.
Surely, Kirko, you are aware that no scientific discovery is complete without testing.
Come here. These two serfs will be our test subjects.
It seemed like some mornings it was just crisscrossing the whole sky. It was just like a giant checkerboard.
Bill Nichols snapped several photos of the strange clouds from his home in Stamps, Arkansas. They begin as normal contrails from a jet engine, but do not fade away like a normal contrail. Soon after, he saw particles in the air.
You know, because we'd see it drop to the ground in a haze.
Nichols then noticed the material collecting on the ground. KSLA News 12 had the sample tested at a lab. The results? A high level of barium, 6.8 parts per million, more than 3 times the toxic level set by the EPA. KSLA News 12 discovered chemtrails are even mentioned by name in the initial draft of House Bill 2977 back in 2001 under the Space Preservation Act. But the military denies any such program exists.
And what I found was unusual spiking since the early 1990s in barium, aluminum.
Rosalind Peterson of California Skywatch says health department records show a sharp increase in both chemicals in the water supply of Northern California, dating from the time the huge contrails first appeared over her home in Mendocino County.
This had to be airborne. because how could it get to such diverse regions of our county? We have jets going in every direction.
Able to spray it on the populace. I gotcha. I'll rig some sort of spray device. Remember, I used to be a pretty good crop duster.
Later, the 1994 Rockefeller Report concluded hundreds of thousands of military personnel were also subjected to secret biological experiments over the last 60 years.
A string of congressional investigations has uncovered more than 20,000 secret tests that were carried out against the American people between 1910 and 2000. From 1943 until present, the British have tested lethal nerve gas on their own personnel on land, air, and sea. Many died instantly. Still others died grueling deaths over several years.
They start off like little pimples or something, and you scratch them, and they bust open, and they spring forth these weird fibers like a strand of a piece of cotton.
They sometimes move, which is really bizarre.
Things basically moving under my skin. You know,
The people claim they have strings, not hairs, but strings growing out of their skin.
It's all a system. They're all connected together.
They're just these awful little black things that intertwine.
Light fibers on my face. I saw black specks coming out of what looked like pimples, really.
It sounds like these people are talking about something out of a science fiction movie, but they're not. They're describing the painful symptoms associated with a mysterious skin disease called Morgellons.
It's like fibers that come out of your skin?
Yes, there's this fibrous material. It's in layers.
Look at your arm.
Our hands swell and they itch, and
it's been described as feeling as if either bugs are crawling on the surface of your skin or underneath your skin.
Underneath the skin.
A call from Leanne Cofield's sister. A brief message with a long story. Leanne believes something is killing her mother and both of her sisters. Painful sores cover parts of their bodies.
She found countless others experiencing the same misery, a brain fog of sorts, problems concentrating.
One of the most disturbing is the cognitive impairment, the inability to think clearly.
The feeling of bugs crawling on and biting the skin, and painful itchy sores that produce mysterious red and blue fibers and black specks.
Some black specks came out of my hand and came out of my arm.
And within 2 years, at age 29, he was out of baseball.
Twitching. Just uncontrolled muscle twitches for months at a time through the night. I mean, and that's just weird.
They say out of slow-healing skin lesions will come bizarre filaments, especially after bathing.
That's when it would just really just ooze, literally ooze out of my skin.
There's no reasonable explanation for it. I'm not seeing things, I'm watching it happen. I mean, we're pretty sane people. But something weird is going on, and something needs to be done.
He freaked out. He wanted to ignore it, which I wanted to too, but when it comes to your kids, you gotta stop ignoring it.
And we need to stop this damn spraying of chemtrails that includes nanoorganisms that are silicon-based life forms that do not originate on this planet, as well as mycobacteria, Pseudomonas florensis, and other organisms that are destroying the health and immune systems of people. And they're doing it on purpose. It's part of their population control.
We wanted to find out exactly what effects barium has on the body. We spoke with Mark Ryan, the director of the Poison Control Center. Ryan tells KSLA News 12 that short-term exposure can lead to anything from stomach to chest pains. Long-term exposure causes blood pressure problems. Ryan addressed concerns by chemtrail researchers that barium could be meant to wear down a person's immune system.
Anything that causes ill effects in the body long-term chronically is going to affect your ability because it's constantly working on the body. So from that aspect, yeah, it's a potential.
Our only concern is the amount of reduction we can achieve. Have them stand by the panel.
Go on. Go stand by the panel. You've gone too far. You've killed them.
My kids have to see not only their dad, but their mom disintegrating, and that's got to be really scary, too.
Close to 80% of the Earth's population has been eliminated.
doubt that Morgellons is real. And I would ask anybody that says it's psychotic or delusional parasitosis to perhaps take a look at the work of Victor Sarkozy is a professor of molecular and cell biology at Stony Brook University in New York. Sarkozy's team took a scanning electron microscope pictures of Morgellons fibres that were at the time extruding from the skin of patients suffering from Morgellons. Absolutely, Roxy, and there's no doubt that Morgellons is real. The scanning scope confirmed these were unlike any natural fibre or synthetic fibre that known to our technology. The scanning scope confirmed these were unlike any natural fibre or synthetic fibre that known to our technology. Basically, these are fibres. They seem to be cellulose on the outside. Now, this is where the controversy has come in. People saying they've got cellulose fibres coming out their skin. But under Sarkozy's scanning electron microscope, you can actually see what they are. They are rocks. These are rocks, and they are covered with a cellulose outer coating. Now, one of them, we've got one here made of calcite, another one made of alumina rock, and various ribbon-like cylindrical and faceted fibres all coated with minerals. Now, these stab through the skin of patients. Anywhere on the epidermis they come through. And you can imagine tiny little rocks stabbing at you from the inside. They hurt. They burn like hell. So if anybody wants to deny that Morgellons that there is a disease out there, Morgellons is a wrong term for it. It's genetically modified organism, Roxy. I think they've left the term Morgellons there because it just doesn't sound like anything. If you started calling it what it was, a genetically modified organism, people might, stand back and take more notice of it.
In fact, being used in some way to mitigate some of the kind of environmental hazard that we are not aware of yet. We began sending letters to the governor of their state demanding to know what the heck is being sprayed in the skies over the country. And so it was the fact that so much of this aluminum oxide nanomaterial that they're using.
I suddenly saw chemtrails. I didn't know what they were, but I had always been interested in jet come and spray, leave these trails and cause it to be overcast. They'd come for 3 hours at the same time every day, and I could see them out my window. They'd go back and forth, and then they would leave. And when they did this, my sinuses burned. I could taste the metallic taste in the air. My joints hurt. I got fatigued, tired. All these symptoms came on. My short-term memory, I couldn't remember names, dates, and places.
spraying that chemtrail?
Yep. Good thing we're above it.
I know.
Otherwise we'd be dead right now.
I'm gonna put this on YouTube. I'm gonna put this on YouTube.
You videoing right now? Oh god, don't video right now.
It's like it's spraying out of the top of his wings.
Don't do any evidence.
I think that is a chem plane now. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it, yeah. This guy. There's another one. Try and get on him, focused in on him. Here he is right here. There he goes, blasting. There he is, shooting out his stuff. Poof. Sorry about that. See him just shooting spurts of it out. It's obviously running out. There he is. He's out of juice. You can see he completely ran out. This is what he left us. And then he shut it off right there. And that is actually where he started from, right there.
Late into the evening, flames and a dark plume of smoke continued to rise from the downed aircraft, drifting across the ocean and Pacific Coast Highway. The military tanker plane was taking off from Point Mugu Naval Air Station around 5:30 this evening when it crashed.
It veered off the runway, it crashed. The 3 crew members aboard the tanker were able to get out. One apparently sustained minor injuries, and the other 2 are fine.
Thick black smoke and flames poured from the wreckage. The tanker was carrying about 150,000 gallons of fuel. The Boeing 707 is owned by Omega Air, a civilian company that contracts with the Navy and Marines. This video from Omega's website shows one of the planes in its fleet. The company uses specially equipped and converted airplanes for in-flight refueling.
They were providing tanker support for fleet operations off of the coast here at Point Mugu, so they provide tanking support for fighter aircraft that are based aboard aircraft carriers.
By nightfall, the flames had finally burned out, but fire crews remain on the scene. Officials say the 3 crew members are very fortunate.
It's a miracle in itself that they were able to get out of that airplane, especially with all the fuel that was on the airplane.
a strange substance found by a southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention.
Well, they say the government is dumping chemicals on us to control or manipulate the weather.
And they say the unusual-looking jet trails in the sky are actually chemical-laden chemtrails.
People say the government is up there in airplanes spraying all kinds of chemicals to change or manipulate the weather, leaving what you see there, and they call that a chemtrail. So when I look up there and I think are contrails, you're telling me are chemtrails?
Yes, that a contrail would be dissipated by now.
And it's interesting, Dale and Christina, this is of interest not just in this country, but European countries and frankly all over the world. A lot of folks interested in it.
Well, Dave, you mentioned that climatologists and others who study the atmosphere believe that they'd be able to surely spot any kind of signs of an ominous plot.
Our journey started in San Diego, California, where thousands of scientists, engineers, policymakers, and journalists gathered for the American Association for the Advancement of Science Conference. One of the topics was the artificial manipulation of the Earth's climate, also called geoengineering. During the meeting, scientists spoke about the plausibility of implementing geoengineering campaigns throughout the world under the guise of preventing global warming. One widely accepted theory was to block the sun by spraying something into the atmosphere. When they were asked about existing aerosol programs, they stated clearly that no such programs have ever been implemented. But strangely, these proposals sounded exactly like what people around the world are claiming is already happening.
When I found out that the American Association for the Advancement of Science was going to be held down here and the main body of topics would be on geoengineering, I had to come. I had to be in on this. I had to hear what these top climate change scientists had to say.
And that's the other question about chemtrails and whether geoengineering is being deployed right now without our knowledge. I don't have any personal insight into that, other than to say that I worked in government at pretty high levels in the White House and in at state government. I'm personally skeptical of that. But obviously, you never know what you don't know.
Chemtrails. On the internet, they are cited as proof of the government creating clouds to combat global warming.
They claim the American government, with the secret approval of the national government, is covertly using jet aircraft to spray population centres with aluminium, with barium, and with strontium so as to reduce people's humidity and reduce the global population.
I'm always a little bit suspicious because the government doesn't seem that capable to do something on such a large scale.
That is not rain, that is not snow. Believe it or not, military aircraft flying through the region is dropping chaff. Small bits of aluminum, sometimes it's made of plastic or even italicized paper products, but it's used as an anti-radar issue, and obviously they're up there practicing. Now, they won't confirm that, but I was in the Marine Corps for many years, and I'll tell you right now, that's what it is.
And what happens here, military jets, some come out of Key West Air Force Base, and they move off into the atmosphere, and they drop mylar strips. Some could be a little wider, some are small glass fibers that are coated in aluminum. And what the Air Force does is they take their military jets and they dump these out of the aircraft, they fall into the atmosphere, and some take as much to a day to fall down.
This is inevitably military or something going on. The government, the Air Force, you see this kind of a pattern like this, you can rest assured there's something going on. They're actually little bitty magnetic and little bitty strips of, whether it's aluminum.
Well, it's a nuisance to you and I to determine what's real and what's not, but it looks like it is a life-saving operation there for the military.
The apparent motive behind this conspiracy theory is one world government.
Order, I cannot hear.
Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the House that both my ministry and my colleague, the Minister of Health, who have received correspondence on this issue, that this conspiracy theory does not have an iota of truth, and that the trails observed from aircraft simply come from jet engines.
Question number 9 of order.
And I think what an appalling example it is of the new Foreign Affairs spokesperson for the Labour Party that she's spreading conspiracy theories about the United States government.
The House has heard sufficient.
It is called geoengineering, fighting global warming by putting a chemical dust in the atmosphere and reflecting harmful radiation back into space.
We take geoengineering to mean deliberate, large-scale intervention in the Earth system.
There are a variety of schemes that have been discussed for geoengineering. A classic example is injecting reflecting particles into Earth orbit.
Nevertheless, there might be some good reasons to think about alumina. It turns out, first of all, there's been a lot of work on the environmental consequences of alumina in the stratosphere. The big deal really is that alumina has 4 times the volumetric rate of forcing for small particles as does sulfur. And that means you have 4 times less surface area for the same rate of forcing. And this is a much bigger deal. You have roughly 16 times less the coagulation rate. And that's the thing that really drives removal. So you could get away, we think, with much smaller mass fluxes.
So that's why we see things like in the use aircraft patent from '89, they talk about aluminum. And that's why we're seeing in the surface water samples aluminum. And here's David Keith saying that aluminum has 4 times the reflective volume surface area. So they'd like us to think that we're talking about sulfur, but here they slipped up and let it out that aluminum is 4 times better to achieving their ends, and it sounds like it's going to be one they don't want us to know the effects of.
The little picture is from a nanofabrication study, which shows you can make very high quality, and do this in just a jet in a very simple way, make high quality alumina particles just by spraying aluminum vapor out, which oxidizes. So it's certainly in principle possible to do that. There's a big literature that's already looked at that. And you could do that by either building new versions of these aircraft or even re-engineering existing aircraft. So there's some ideas of that. So you go to an engineering firm and you want this done. They don't say this is hard or unusual. They say, okay, yes, we could do it. Aerosol geoengineering looks like it is so cheap that the cost is basically not going to be an issue. That means that implementation decisions will be risk-to-risk decisions. The risk of doing it against the risk of not doing it. And it makes the problem of how we govern it fundamentally harder and different and novel. So I've told you that it's cheap to deliver materials to the stratosphere, and I'm convinced that's true. I don't think that will change. But I think the more we do research, the less easy this will look, the more complicated the environmental effects will look. And that's a good thing, because right now it looks too easy. So I think that if we do more research, we're likely to find out that it's harder and more complicated than we thought, and that the side effects are harder to manage. And that's a healthy outcome that will make it easier to do the management. Of course, the opposite reaction is possible. It's an empirical question how people will actually react to knowledge about this. Another reaction is to say, if these crazy scientists are so concerned about putting CO2 in the atmosphere, they want to think about these things, then that might actually mean we should be more serious about the risks of CO2 in the atmosphere. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard. It's more like free riding on our grandkids. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard. It's more like free riding on our grandkids.
Numerous air quality studies, including from CARB, California Air Quality Resource Board, have named submicron-sized particulates as being particularly harmful for human respiration. Through all the discussions today, I have not heard any mention of this fallout, and has this been studied, and also the effects of a highly reactive metal like aluminum on toxifying soils and waters?
The question is, what would be the effects of these materials on human health if they came down into the stratosphere, in particular small particles and aluminum?
So the collaborators of mine working on the aerosol scheme are actually folks from Carnegie Mellon who focused on human health impacts. And while we haven't published it, that was the very first thing we did, was do the order of magnitude calculation in level pencil and paper, but with an expert on human health impacts about whether there could be an issue. And for aluminum or other particles, there are a lot of toxicological things that need to get looked at seriously. But if you're just thinking about the sheer number of particles and the human health impact of small particles, the answer is, well, we haven't published it. That was the first thing we looked at with some of the leading experts who do epidemiological research on human health impacts, and it's not even close to being an issue.
Clarify, so 10 megatons of aluminum dumped into the atmosphere would have no human health impact.
So let me be more careful here. We're to separate out the toxicological. So the alumina, we've only begun to research and published nothing. Alumina, we've only begun to research and published nothing.
Dane looked at him and he said, so you're telling me that spraying 10 to 20 megatons of aluminum, as you said, would have no human health effects? He took a deep breath and he swallowed and he said, let me be more careful here.
We haven't done anything serious on alumina, and so there could be something terrible that we'll find tomorrow we haven't looked at it.
And that, for me, that was the whole main point of what is going to be coming out to the public. It's the damaging effects of aluminum that are being found around the world in massive amounts. Here's David Keith confronted on this very issue, and he looked, you know, at that point like they just let the cat out of the bag.
We haven't done anything serious on Illumina, and so there could be something terrible that we'll find tomorrow. We haven't looked at it.
They're proceeding because they have an agenda that's separate from trying to thwart this crisis of global warming. You know, there's obviously several other objectives, whether it's depopulation, control, weapons aspects, communications aspects, all kinds of things, you know, wild cards that we know nothing about. We don't really know, and I'm not going to attempt to speculate on exactly what the agendas are, but we can see clearly the agendas are not benefiting mankind. You know, it's benefiting the agenda of the elite.
And so I think the question is, how do you draw the line between some activity that is allowed and doesn't need global governance and activities that do require global governance?
Dr. John Holdren has agreed to serve as Assistant to the President for Science and Technology and Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. I look forward to his wise counsel in the years ahead.
My personal opinion is that we have to keep geoengineering on the table. We have to look at it very carefully because we might get desperate enough to want to use it.
So what would we do if in year 2040 or 2060 there's a severe climate crisis, say widespread famines or Greenland sliding suddenly into the ocean? That the only plausible way in which we could start the Earth cooling this century is to directly intervene in the climate system, say by putting particles in the stratosphere.
We do stuff in the stratosphere all the time, of course, and so it's not as though the stratosphere is absolutely pristine. But you don't want to have people going off and doing things that involve large radiative forcings or go on for extended periods, or for that matter provide lots of reactive surfaces that could result in significant ozone destruction.
You know, maybe I'm putting a particle into the atmosphere because I'm trying to make money, or maybe I'm putting a particle into the atmosphere because I'm engaging in scientific research and trying to understand cloud physics, or maybe I'm putting this particle into the atmosphere because I'm trying to make it rain locally to seed a cloud and get more snow on our ski slopes. And this obviously raises all kinds of questions. It's hugely risky. It will likely negatively impact some people, but we might find ourselves in a situation where those risks seem worth taking.
One of the things that really shocked me was in one of the breakouts, they had the benefits of these programs and then the risks. Now the benefits, the one thing that was stated was the just cooling the planet. You know, some of the risks were ozone depletion, droughts in Africa and Asia.
I got to tell you, I came away from this experience after listening to these scientists for 4 days of symposiums, really concerned, because it's clear now that they are justifying, rationalizing, and looking to legitimize some really, really horrible impacts, further impacts on our environment. And they're basically formulating the sales strategy and the implementation and oversight strategy and the funding strategy.
After San Diego, I was shocked by the programs that had been proposed. I decided to write about it. That night when I finished, I sent the article to an online publication with my email address attached. When I woke up the next morning, my inbox was flooded with responses from around the world. Why? Because I had just broken the story on aluminum in geoengineering models, which I had no clue at the time that very few people knew about. Now this metal, aluminum, is being found in massive quantities way above normal levels all over in rain, in soil, and in snow.
before about 5 years ago, our skies were typically blue, and now you see it's covered with lines and haze. We began to eventually test to see if in fact there was credence to what we were seeing. From the first test in precipitation in spring of '06 that tested 7 parts per billion. We've since had tests that have escalated as high as 3,450 parts per billion. That's a 50,000% increase in aluminum.
I sent this water, see it's right there, it says backyard rain gauge. Aluminum, 1,010 micrograms per liter of aluminum. And here's barium, 8 micrograms per liter of barium. And this is from the labs up in Redding, California. This is a certified government report. And here's what normal is. I asked them what would be normal. 0.5 would be normal.
For aluminum?
For aluminum. And the maximum allowed in drinking water, they said 50 micrograms per liter, and government action required at 1,000. Well, we're over 1,000.
We're so far off the scales for toxicity in aluminum that it appears to be affecting the flora greatly. Our grass is about 1/3 its height that it was only a few years ago. A 35-year forestry biologist has done 50 pH tests. The rain across the board, every single test was 10 times or more alkaline than it should be.
Even if you say, well, very poor stream, we might have gotten only 300. But even so, there's only 30 bugs here.
In the same stream you're looking at about 1,000, how many years ago were you finding it?
About 20 years ago, this had about 1,000.
If I could just clarify, so 10 megatons of aluminum dumped into the atmosphere would have no human health impact.
So let me be more careful here. Work to separate out the toxicological, so the aluminum we've only begun to research and publish nothing.
This is a very delicate moment for the powers that be, because they're taking a covered up operation like the tropospheric aerosol program, or Chemtrails, Project Icarus, whatever, it's had many names over the years, and they're making it overt into a geoengineering scientific shield to deflect sunlight, because global warming is out of hand.
I'm a substitute teacher, and so I get to work with a lot of kids. I get to see a lot of kids in this county. And what I noticed in the last 2-3 years I've been working with the kids is that our kids, majority of them have upper respiratory problems. I'd say 2/3 to 3/4 of the kids are hacking and coughing most of the school year. I've spoken with teachers who told me, I've brought this attention to them, you know, have you seen these skies, you know, all your life? Some of them have lived up here all their lives, and they say that, yeah, their skies look different from when they grew up, because it's a lot of times covered in this white milky haze. But they also have told me that they notice the kids, that the attention deficit, the attention span of the kids, it's their lives as teachers have become so much more difficult.
And again, many times at night as the sun starts to set and there's huge banks of this aircraft disbursement, it literally looks like there's forest fires burning across the mountains, because it's a very dirty color. It's not a white cloud or a natural sunset by any means. It looks like there's some sort of massive industrial activity or forest fires burning over there, and we see that typically every night.
When you get 50 fish and maybe only 1 or 2 got a bug inside them, normally the trout stomachs are crammed with food.
There was mason jars, and they were brand new, sterilized, and that's what we catch the rain in. And then there was a HEPA filter that we tested the air with.
Okay, so you caught rain and then you basically filtered air. What did you find?
Aluminum and barium.
We haven't done anything serious on aluminum, and so there could be something terrible that we'll find tomorrow we haven't looked at.
You may remember the 8,000 dry lightning strikes that occurred in June of 2008. Yes. You may remember that. Again, my background, I've done lightning suppression work for Bechtel Power, and I've done worked in some of the first solar plants in the continental U.S. Atmospheric conductivity in the lower 48, I have read a couple articles that's been measured at 4 times its historical conductivity. More atmospheric conductivity would logically mean more lightning. The strikes that we had that day, I spoke to dozens of 30, 40-year veteran firefighters, and they've never seen anything like it. Atmospherically, they've never seen anything like it. And our skies were literally covered with aircraft trails the day that happened. But if you have a more conductive atmosphere, you're going to get more lightning.
Whether people believe in chemtrails or not, the geoengineering should be scary enough. And when people learn about geoengineering, chemtrails will then become apparent because they're the same.
This is from a snow surface at Mount Shasta. 61,100 micrograms per liter of aluminum. This is just ordinary snow water. And people are drinking this stuff when they're hiking on the mountain. And remember, government action is required at 1,000. This is 61 times over the government limit, and our hikers are drinking this poisonous water on Mount Shasta Mountain itself. Strontium, 383. Barium and strontium will take away from your bone structure, make for weak bone structure. The aluminum, though, that's scary. You know, what is it? Alzheimer's, autism, gosh knows what that's doing.
A number of other things, neurological. We speak of these tests that contain massive amounts of heavy metals. Often the first response from people is, well, they're migrating from China. But California Air Quality Resources Board did a study on the aerosols from China, and metals were not amongst those aerosols. Again, the geoengineering patents specifically describe a polymer fiber to keep those metallic particles aloft a little bit longer. So again, if you have one of the most stringent air quality boards on the planet stating that these aerosols are not migrating from there, they weren't there 5 years ago, they're there in lethal quantities now, where are they coming from? Is that where they're coming from? You know, these aircraft you see laying these trails down, again, all I can say for sure is that the metals we're seeing match the patents exactly, and the patents match what we see above us exactly in the scope of creating artificial clouds. So we can only conclude this is the source of these metals.
Maybe 6.8 if you look at the darkest little portions in there. But this is black oak leaf. This is black oak acorns. This should be very acid, and I'm getting 10 times higher than expected. There's something really wrong here.
Amphibians, great decline. Used to sound like the Ozarks here with the tree frogs, and there's a small fraction of what there was here in only 4 years.
So there's something very wrong going on with the ecology around here. When you should be getting 5.5 and you're getting 6.8, there's something damned wrong.
It's not just activists anymore. Now the scientific community that has their head on straight is speaking out.
I would be willing to more or less kill 18 Mississippians to save 1,800 New Orleanians.
Let me go back to the Kennedy assassination. Do you remember Jim Garrison in New Orleans, the DA down there, fingered 27 people as being part of the plot to kill the president? Carlos Marcello was the major drug dealer in New Orleans, and his people were involved. Now, one of the people associated was a man named Barry Seals. He was a drug dealer and later a CIA operative. The FBI report on Carlos Marcello, the big drug dealer and underworld character, the FBI report said he made his money selling tomatoes and real estate. And that was the FBI evaluation of the #1 drug dealer. Now, remember Barry Seals. Now, fast forward to the Watergate break-in in 1972. Now, I was at the Watergate. The CIA had a rather large international operation there under a corporate name. Then they had other foundations under that and so on. By the way, did you know the Catholic Church built the Watergate complex as a real estate investment? And they named the Watergate for the dam that went across the Potomac River at that time. It was a water gate. Now, in the Watergate, there were apartments, condominiums, and office section. 3 sections. And inside of the office section was the Democratic National Committee. The FBI found a link between the Democratic National Committee and the White House and a call girl operation, prostitution, that was across the street from the Watergate. I think it was the Plaza condominiums. I'm not sure. I don't remember that. But it was right next to the Holiday Inn that was across the street. The FBI wanted to go in to the Democratic National Committee and find out what they knew. The CIA was also very interested in the breach of security between the prostitutes and the White House. That's how E. Howard Hunt got recruited and Gordon Liddy got recruited to go in there, and they called themselves the Plumbers. They were going to go into the Democratic National Committee to stop the leak, the Plumbers. So here you had the CIA, the FBI, wanting to do this, and the key man was John Dean III.
John Dean. We're going to come right back after this 4-minute break. Our guest today is A.C. Griffith, and we're going to see how this leads into the aerosol crime issue, aerosol program of some sorts that the U.S. government has, and it has already killed people. We'll be right back after this 4-minute break with A.C. Griffith. And join us. And our guest today is A.C. Griffith. As I told you earlier, he had the highest clearances. He was involved with the CIA. He is doing what he believes needs to be done today by telling the truth about these aerosol, whatever you want to call them. What is this aerosol mixture? And why? Of course, that's the big question. He was associated with the Central Intelligence Agency operations, and as I said, he had the National Security Agency top clearance, cryptographic clearance. He joins us today from Richmond, Virginia. Thank you again, A.C. Griffith, for joining us. Now, you are linking together Watergate with what's happening today. I find that an interesting transection here.
I wanted to paint a picture of the background of the people and what the people are capable of and how it works. If you look at the bottom line of anything, you're just going to see the bottom line. But if you have an understanding of the nature and how things operate and how agencies operate, that's something that most people have no clue about, and they wouldn't believe it if you told them. But let me go back. We're running out of time, so I'm going to talk. You talk slow and I'll talk fast, Joyce. I told Joyce earlier to talk slow to me today, so that was that joke.
That was the only caveat. If I come on the show, you have to talk slow. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the Watergate thing was about the prostitution and the connection to the White House, and the White House connection was John Dean III. He was the counsel to the president. He was the president's lawyer. Well, John Dean had an affair going with one of the girls. Maureen Elizabeth Kane Owen Benner was her name. Later married the girl, and her name now is Maureen Elizabeth Kane Owen Benner Dean. So John Dean at the White House wanted to protect her. So he turned on Liddy and E. Howard Hunt and all the people. He even turned on the president. And they bought his testimony against the president. And that kind of in a nutshell, oversimplified, of course, is how Nixon was brought down. Nixon came into the game later. He probably had actually little to do with the actual manipulation. He was manipulated into that. And the CIA was involved in that, and the FBI was involved in it. Fast forward again to the Iranian-Contra. The body count, with the Clinton body count in Mena Airport, Arkansas, was about 75 people that was suicided. The CIA operated that whole thing at the Mena Airport. They put in Rich Mountain Aviation Company, a CIA front, and brought aircraft in from all over the world for refurbishing. Barry Seals showed up again. You remember Barry Seals now with the Kennedy thing and Carlos Marcello, the drug dealer. Barry Seal got a KC-123 out of Wright-Patterson, running guns to South America and drugs back. they were dealing in hundreds of tons of drugs. It was so many drugs, it was like freight trains loaded with drugs. And 75 people that got in the way were taken out, including Vince Foster and all of those people. Noticed an interesting thing. Admiral Jeremiah Border, he was the chief of naval operations. He was a Jewish man. He enlisted in the Navy when he was 17 years old, stayed an enlisted man for 6 years, and then went up in the ranks to become the #1 naval officer for the United States Navy. He was chief of naval operations. Well, unexpectedly one night he decided to suicide himself in his house, and he shot himself twice in the chest with a shotgun.
That's quite a feat.
Yes, it is. Now, he was the chief of naval operations, and he opposed the Chemtrail project. Then the Chemtrail project started after Admiral Borda was replaced. Jeremiah Borda. He was a dedicated man. He was a sincere man. He was a good man. So you're seeing a picture of how this thing operates. The CIA finances projects with monies earned elsewhere. The monies that go into CIA projects don't necessarily come out of congressional appropriations. And I will tell you that the Congress as a whole is completely oblivious to the aerosol program. They are afraid to ask. I had an meeting with the administrative aide of a congressman. He drove all the way to Richmond from Washington to meet with me. And we spent about an hour. I gave him a complete overview presentation. He looked at me, stood up, and he said, "What do you expect me to do, Griff? They would lie to me too." That was his exact words. And I shook his hand and hugged the secretary and left. And that was it. That tells me that the Congress, I know for a fact that Congress is out of the loop. Dennis Kucinich.
Okay, we're going to come back from this break. We've got a 3-minute break, then I'm going to let him run with it for 20 minutes. You're hearing from A.C. Griffith here today, and the subject is the purpose of chemtrail aerosols. We're talking to A.C. Griffith today. He is an individual who has taken, it's been a lot of time that he has done in research of this subject, years and years of research. He was associated with the National Security Agency, had a top-secret cryptographic clearance, and he joins us today to help us understand what is in those chemtrail aerosols. And thank you very much again, AC, for joining us. Well, let's talk about the chemtrail aerosols, because you did significant research, got into the program itself, and, sir, what did you learn?
It's not that simple, Joyce. It's a very complicated thing. You must know the people. You must know what they're capable of. You must know their operation, their intent. You must realize that you're dealing with people with no faces that haven't been elected. You don't know who they are. You don't know what they're putting in those aircraft. The security on the substance going into the aircraft, there's very little security on that. Whatever somebody puts in the aircraft is going to come out of the aircraft. That's a real concern. The Environmental Protection Agency has been told to keep their nose out of it. On the state levels, the state various, here in Virginia, it's the Department of Environmental Quality. I was told by high people in that they were told to leave it alone. Don't look at it. Don't look at the air quality when it comes to the aerosols. Look at, talk about ozone levels and things like that.
Well, you mentioned that you had talked to one congressman, and then you mentioned Representative Kucinich as we were going to the break.
Yes, he introduced H.R. 2799, I believe that was it, and it was he was called aside and told to take it out, and he did, and he got very quiet about it. I can't tell you enough that this is a very dangerous thing to get into. It's very dangerous to talk about this. As long as people talk about the normal stuff on the internet, they're okay. The agencies have been told to leave this alone. Now, as in the Watergate and some of these other projects that I mentioned, everybody involved thought they were doing it for some reason, some different reason. They didn't know what it was about. Everybody was going in different directions, and that's the same thing we find here in the aerosol program. The pilots probably don't know what they're doing. The crews that put it in, they have no idea what it was for. We believe that it was sold to governments as global warming fix. We believe that, but it wasn't. Here's what it was about. It was about a sub-program, making a sub-program in a Navy program called the Variable Terrain Radio Parabolic Equation, VTRPE, function over land terrain. That's what it's about. That is what it's about. You've heard all kinds of explanations for 7 or 8 years, but it's for the VTRPE. And it's part of the Radio Frequency Mission Planner. It's a system. It's a computer system, RFMP, Radio Frequency Mission Planner, and the VTRPE programs are a sub-program within that system. And it was first put on the Enterprise and aircraft carriers for battlefield imaging. The system would not work over land terrain adequately, or accurately rather, without creating a ducting of radio waves over land terrain, and they use the mixture of barium salt to do that. And that enables the whole system to function. It is the system that the United States uses in Afghanistan and Iraq, and probably will use in Iran and some of the other applications. And that's what it's about. It's about the VTRPE. I see we're running out of time, and there's several things that I've just got to mention to you. Now, within the Navy program, we see DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and they're into biologicals, and that's where Clifford shines. He has identified many, many very harmful biologicals coming out of the aerosols.
And of course, you're speaking of Clifford Carnicom, just
Clifford
so people
Carnicom, yes.
are aware, and that's carnicom.com. That's CARNICOM.com.
We have the greatest admiration for Clifford, and we have admiration for Scott the weatherman too. Scott Stevens, he's a man of conviction. We admire him for that.
Yes.
So DARPA is involved, and DARPA is involved in spraying cities. We caught them spraying Asheville, North Carolina several years ago with a substance called BCTP, developed under one of their contracts at the University of Michigan, and it's an anti-anthrax. So that was one of the first that we saw coming out of the aircraft. They brought them in and sprayed the city. Strange, Art Bell's mother lived in Asheville, North Carolina, and he talked about it on the air, although he didn't fully understand it. Now, here's the killer. Here's the big one. Recently, we've come upon another danger in the atmosphere over America. It has nothing to do necessarily with the Navy VTRPE or the aerosoling. It is an attack on North American weather. The weather is being manipulated from outside of the country. The hurricane that slammed into New Orleans was guided in there. So was the Hurricane Rita and Gaston and some of the others. We believe that the Russian systems that have been developed since the late 50s, early 60s in Russia is the ultimate weapon, and we have no defenses against it. It's called scalar. That's a modern name for the systems. Scalar weapons. There are 3 divisions of scalar coming against America. One is called energetics, and one is called bioenergetics, and one is called psychoenergetics. The psycho function can actually manipulate mind, thoughts, personalities, and cause astronaut Lisa to wear a diaper driving across the country.
Really?
That kind of thing, yes. There was an admiral on an aircraft recently that stood up and said to everybody on the plane that he had smallpox, and they took him off the plane. He was in medicine. That was psychoenergetics. It's functions on the mind and mind functions. You can actually insert another personality in the person. The bio comes against living bodies, their biochemistry. And the energetics can come against the Challenger, the Columbia, the Thrasher submarine, where 129 men died. And those were, we believe, we are sure they were attacks by Russian scalar weapons. They're actually interferometer transmitters used in an interferometer way with 2 transmitters intersecting over North America. That's
now,
what's happening.
For those that don't understand scalar, would you define a scalar or tell us what scalar weaponry is?
It's very complicated. If I read you the definition, you still wouldn't know. But on the website linked with you, the mysterious booms, you will find a link to Tom Bearden, Colonel Bearden in Huntsville. He defines all of that and tells quite a story about it. Tom Bearden has been the Tesla guru for many years. He is highly respected. He is a brilliant man and a great American.
And he is speaking out also. Or he has in the past?
He has in the past, yes.
Right, he is not speaking out now.
We'll talk about that off the air. I don't want to get people hurt. This is a very dangerous thing to get into. I can't stress that enough. The scalar transmitters in Russia are controlled by the Federal Security Service. It's abbreviated FSB, but it actually stands for the Federal Security Service, the old KGB, and not necessarily under the direct control of the Russian government. It's quite a story to this. The woodpecker transmitters that have been going on for 25, 30 years over North America are part of the weapons system coming against North America. We're experiencing and hearing from people all over the country that are experiencing dizzy spells, and they fall forward to the left. They're dizzy, forward to the left. I'm sure many of your listeners right now are saying, my God, that's happened to me. Well, it's happening all over the country, and that is the manifestation of these scalar weapon systems. The town in Kansas was devastated as a result of guiding and manufacturing that storm. Now, that's going to increase in the rest of this year. The hurricanes were suppressed last year, but hopefully the United States science community will be able to suppress them again. That is the real threat against us right now, is the Russian. Now, other countries have these weapon systems. We are late coming up to speed. We do not have adequate defenses against them right now. I will tell you that Israel stood between the United States and Russia with its defenses. Israel protected the United States on several occasions when we got right down to the line. There's been some white knuckle time with this, and the people are completely oblivious to it. But again, we're sure that the Challenger was taken down, and other aircraft, other commercial aircraft on the West Coast. Alaskan Airlines has been having a lot of trouble running into these scalar fields, but nobody knows about it. Back when I was like 19 years old, I first went into the service. We were in the Philippines, and in intelligence, we would penetrate Chinese airspace on a regular basis. We would penetrate the space to see how they would react, and we would listen to their communications, their military, and we would know something about their defenses. Well, the Russians are doing the very same thing to us right now, and we're not responding. It's as though we have no idea what's going on. And each time that happens, they become more confident. If we go into Iran, God only knows what's going to happen. But if we don't go into Iran, God only knows what's going to happen to us. So I can see some real desperate times ahead. We also know in the study of this, as I told you earlier, when we started looking at this, there was one door, and then all of a sudden we saw 2 doors, then 4 doors, then 8 doors, and 16 doors, and 32 doors to explore, and that's why it's taken all of these years to do that. We know that atomic devices have been pre-positioned in American cities. We know that Israel pre-positioned atomic devices in Russian cities. So there's some standoff here, but we are in a desperate time, and people are oblivious to it.
Well, I'm afraid that you're right on the oblivious part, because people cannot believe that this country would do that because of the facade of, oh, we care about your freedom and we're there for you, and we want to provide the most strong military to protect you. And they hate freedom, and that's why they're after us. And all these phony things that we have been fed. But, you know, there is a paper that was done, and I really appreciate receiving this. It was a thesis by Matthew Doggett that, as I understand, is not on the internet, about the documentation behind what you're talking about here with respect to this project. And I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, it's called an Atmospheric Sensitivity and Validation Study of the Variable Terrain Radio Parabolic Equation Model, or the VTRPE, as A.C. Griffith was just discussing. Now, can you just help us understand? That's a big title, Atmospheric Sensitivity and Validation Study of the Variable Terrain Radio Parabolic Equation Model. What is, sir, and I have to, excuse me for asking this, but what is VTRPE?
It is a sub-program, a computer program within the Radio Frequency Mission Planner system that's key to battlefield operations. It is key. We cannot fight wars without that. We've come to that. In World War II, you put a man in the field with a gun and say, go shoot him, you know, but today's military operates by a satellite and ground radar. So this system ties into satellite radar and ground radar, and that VTRPE can paint a three-dimension battlefield image over land terrain from a ship 200 miles in the Atlantic or the Pacific.
All right, so you say originally it was done to get this three-dimensional battlefield imaging for warships and then for battlefields. Now, how does that translate into something that's going to be negative for our health, though?
You're using barium salt and other DARPA aerosols. You're primarily using a mixture of barium salts to make it work over land terrain adequately, accurately.
And there are some serious negative effects using barium, and of course a lot of that information is at carnicom.com. What else do you see as being a problem of doing? Now, you're saying that this was an allegedly somewhat innocuous program to try and just do battlefield imaging.
That's how it started. Then DARPA got into it, and other agencies got into it, and God only knows where it is now and what's coming out of those planes. You see, I tried to paint a picture hurriedly of the Iranian-Contra, which was a CIA operation, and this pretty much is a CIA Navy operation. You're dealing with people, you don't know who they are, they're not accountable to anybody, they're capable of dastardly things. You see, the American people are totally out of the loop. Their reality is based on their life experience. You see, the way you judge things and the way you process things, your opinions are based on your own life experience. Most people haven't had these experiences. I was sitting at a kitchen table with a person about a year ago that had retired from the CIA, and they said to me, she said to me, they do something bad to us, we have to do something twice as bad to them. They do something 3 times as bad, we have to do something 4 times in order to survive and keep the country together and keep the people alive. And we turn into real bastards doing this, you know. And the American people are not aware that is the reality of survival in this country, you know, and they are very critical. There are no total black, total white. It's 1,000 shades of gray in between. And I dare say if some of the people or you or I were president of the United States and responsible for the lives of 300 million people, we would probably be doing the same things, and we would be criticized just like our government. There is no easy way to do these things. It's military is designed to kill and break. It's not designed to be politically correct. You know, we're coming into difficult times. Our country is being taken away from us, and the people are allowing it because of political correctness. I want to mention, Joyce, I see I'm watching the clock.
Okay, well,
here.
we've got a 3-minute break, and we're going to come back and talk about, give me the subject title so we can tell them.
The mysterious booms.
The mysterious booms. We'll be right back. Our guest today is A.C. Griffith. You don't want to miss it. We're talking to A.C. Griffith, who is associated with the National Security Agency. He had a top secret clearance. It was a cryptographic clearance. He's been associated with CIA operations. And the VTRPE that he just mentioned, there's going to be a document up on the website in just a little while. We are going to put up a document. It's some, I think, 61 pages. 61 pages, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot even understand it, but it is about the VTRPE program. I could not even find it on the internet. It comes from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the Air Force Institute of Technology, and I want to thank A.C. Griffith for being able to put this up on the website. You are going to want to get it. It definitely is a keeper. Put that in the save section. A.C. Griffith, we were talking about you were mentioning the mysterious booms. Let's talk about how that might be related.
The booms are occurring all over the United States in cities. The national media is not picking up and bringing it together. They're not presenting it as one thing. Each city, each TV station is calling it a mysterious boom, and they are saying essentially the same thing. It's strange, it's a sonic boom and so on, but we don't know what it is ultimately. It is the effect of Russian interferometer transmitters coming against America under the Energetics program. And that's what it is. It's the same energy waves that brought down the Challenger, the Columbia, and the Thrasher submarine and other aircraft in America. That's what's making the booms. It'll shake the ground. It's an earthquake, and you can hear the boom rolling across the city. It is actually the same systems that cause psychoenergetics that create mind dysfunction and dizziness in people. They are upping those programs against 300 million Americans and our land. That is the same systems that are causing the hurricanes, volcanoes, so on. They can hit our volcanoes, and we are in deep if that happens. They can bring our power grids down any second they want to and hold the power grids down as long as they want to out of Russia through the FSB.
Now, there are a lot of people that are talking about this mind control, this stalking program, basically stalking people's minds. And a lot of people have been coming forward wanting to get this information. I think Raven One is one of the excellent websites on this. Is this the kind of thing you're talking about when you talk about the psychoenergetics program?
You can actually insert another personality in the person and cut it off and on.
Wow.
You can take the leader of a country. You can take the Chief of Naval Operations or the Chairman of the Joint Chief, Peter Pace. You can take people like that and insert a different personality in them, cause them to behave any way you want them to, and then subtract it.
We're going to be right back. We've got a 1-minute, 10-second break. We'll be right back. We're finishing up this hour. We'll be beginning our second hour, or excuse me, our third hour on the Power Hour. We'll be right back with A.C. Griffith to finish up. Welcome back to Power Hour. We've been having a very powerful hour with our guest today, A.C. Griffith. Now, the initials, again, if you want to go to the internet, check it out yourself. If you want to do some research, it's VTRPE. The article will be up at the Power Hour News section. Thank you, Wanda, for getting that up there. We've been talking about the purpose of aerosol crimes. I have more respect than you can imagine, A.C. Griffith, for your work, your research, and for your coming forward. This is something that we need to inspire other people to do, and we do appreciate the articles in the brown manila envelopes, the documents in the brown vanilla envelopes that come to the Power Hour, so we can bring to you what we know to be the most truthful of any information out there. And I just have to add, what can we do, sir? What is there out there to overcome this, to defeat this, to expose this? Do you believe that a military coup is going to be the answer, sir?
First, let me answer a question you asked me some minutes ago. To oversimplify, for the sake of understanding the general category, a scalar wave, a scalar weapon, produces something that you can perceive like a gravitational wave. It's not an RF wave, it's a gravitational wave, if anything, for the sake of understanding. There's nothing that we can do to prevent this from occurring. And there are quite a few stories that will make your hair curl. As we make it through each day, we should give thanks to God that we've made it another day. There are no guarantees. Most of the conversation I hear on the internet and on the radio is foolishness. What I've told you is true. If you've noticed, I'm not selling anything. In fact, I didn't want to do this for years and years, and here I am because it's time. It's time to speak out. It's time to be doing things. And through Joyce's patience and tolerance of me, here I am today. Everything I've said to you is true. I have not distorted or lied about anything that we've discussed here. The mysterious booms, it can bring cities down. They can bring our cities down anytime they want to. Of course, they will be taken out also, and that's the only deterrent. That's the only deterrent. The missile systems, the missile protection systems are not as they have been presented to you. They are Tesla domes over cities, over territories. It is part of this scalar systems that afford protection from incoming missiles. It is not shooting a missile up. God only knows where all the money went to that was put into making the American people believe we were building missiles to go up and shoot down enemy missiles.
Wow, this is most enlightening.
We believe that Francis Gary Powers back in the early 60s was taken down by a variation of these systems out of Russia, by the way.
Wow. A.C. Griffith, we thank you very much. I'd love to have you come back on the program, if you will, and take questions from the listeners, because we didn't have a chance to do that. A.C. Griffith, we salute you. Thank you for coming on the Power Hour today.
Thank you, Joyce.
Wow.
Incredible.
We're going to change to Himalayan salt. Everything has frequencies. And did you know that salt has frequencies for the good? Did you know that there is something inside salt that can be absolutely, unbelievably satisfying to your body? We're going to talk to our guest in this next hour on the subject of Himalayan salt. It's more interesting than you can imagine. We'll be right back. 3 minutes. Stay tuned.
Outrageous tyranny pouring in around us. I feel like I'm trapped in an Indiana Jones movie where the sand of the water is pouring into the chamber, and I'm saying we got to get out of here. It's rising, and the yuppies, the trendies, the know-it-alls, they're too busy slicing their arms or hurting themselves or wearing diapers as adults, whatever little decadence they're into, to even worry about a total global government program that's hiding in plain view that they call testing. Department of Energy here in the U.S., set up in Europe as well, spraying mixed in with the jet fuel in some of the cases, mounted to government aircraft, all admitted, not condensation trails, ice crystals, no. But barium salts, aluminum dioxide, other nuclei mixed in so that it creates an artificial haze. And NASA admits we're more than 20% darker, less sunlight hitting us. You don't just think they put that in the Matrix movies, 10 years ago because they thought that up about a global plan to black out the sun. But the scourge isn't the machines, it's us. This is part of the UN says, if you don't play ball with them, they'll just spray you and shut down your weather. Now, here's my frustration. I knew they were going to announce global government with this European crisis years ago. It's now happened. I know all of this. I know they're spraying us every day. I know they're spraying my family. I know we're all filled with heavy metals. I know it's hurting us. And Aaron Dykes, I asked him last Friday, I said, get together our research for Dark Skies, the documentary. We may make it someday, but we're just going to go ahead and start releasing the information and reports. This is just a small part of it right here. Government documents, hour after hour of them on video. Okay? And then I just said, look, he was literally out there 20 minutes ago before we went live. I said, get in here. We got to present what you've got. All these video clips, all this documentation, it's so frustrating. Will the yuppies even watch? Will they even care? Because you get into how they denied this stuff existed, but the people that broke down what they were doing accurately named the chemicals that were being used. But the question is, how long has it been happening? Why is it happening? What's the end game? I'll tell you the end game here at the first, then we'll go to Aaron. The end game is aluminum dioxide in all the soils, where you've got to go to companies like Monsanto. They're coming out with whole seed lines that will grow in aluminum poisoned soil. But that's only part of it. It's about the seed banks, the seed arcs, all of this. It's about weather weapons, shutting down regions that don't play ball. They're already talking about a Chicago mercantile system that will bet on the weather. Well, it's going to be a rigged casino. They don't set up casinos without putting their finger on it, without controlling it. This is about playing God. This is about world government. And this is about genocide and population reduction. Aaron, I'm going to interject points here, but we've only got about 25 minutes, and we'll come back and do part 2, part 3, part 4, because this is so important. It shows how they can keep something bigger than the Manhattan Project secret. We expose it over the years accurately, and they come out and go, yeah, okay, we've been doing it, it's secret, but it's for your own good. And we admit it's happening, but the details are secret. So you've got the floor. Go through as much as you can, the video clips, all of it. This is incredible information.
Yeah, just like you saw back in the 70s with Kissinger and the food as a weapon plans under national security, you see global warming and chemtrails under a national security proposal. And you'll see a lot of the quotes here of Kissinger talking about food as a weapon. Is the U.S. prepared to accept food rationing to help people who can't or won't control their population growth? They're talking about withholding food aid. Would food be considered an instrument of national power? You've heard the Club of Rome talking about how mankind itself is the enemy when it comes to environmental concerns like global warming and the rest of it. The real enemy is mankind. That is from the 1990s with the Club of Rome group. And then coming up at
that was the head of the CFR, too. He's also Club of Rome. That was Haas saying that.
Oh, these groups all interlock, Alex. And you see here where the Air Force wants to, quote, own the weather by 2025 and more, to use it against the enemy and to help their own forces. And it goes on to, it's not cued properly, but Secretary of Defense William Cohen admitting that weather weapons exist, that they can create hurricanes, earthquakes, and the rest of it. So this stuff is admitted, but it is hidden behind a national security pretext, Alex.
Is that the right document?
Well, you've got weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather 2025, and after that is the quote about William Cohen and how they are able to use weather weapons.
Well, take your time. I know I said we're in a hurry, but take your time as we get to these.
Global warming has been called a security threat because it's going to disrupt all these places where there could be droughts or food shortages, and you can guess who's going to be there to create the solution. Here you've got William Cohen saying others are engaging in a type of eco-terrorism where they can alter the climate, set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. It's real. That's the reason we have to intensify our efforts. He said that in 1997 when he was Secretary of Defense.
That was Army times, yeah.
And the point is, all these military researchers, all these national security people are able to manipulate the weather. They're spraying God knows what up there. We know what some of it is. A lot of it's aluminum and sulfur dioxide and the rest of it. But they've created this rationale that it's going to solve global warming. Now let's go.
That's just their cover. They always denied it until 3 years ago. Now they go, we were doing it, but it's secret. It's to save the earth. We're peaceniks. We're Peace Prize winners.
Yeah. And they admit one of the leading researchers of this whole geoengineering thing is David Keith, and he's got a paper explaining how the cloud seeding for the U.S. and for the Soviet Union goes back to the 20s. And we have clips, I know, from Ben Livingston, if we want to play some of that.
Ready to go? Yeah, this is Ben Livingston, who was the father of weather weapons. And I saw him in a little blurb in an article when they declassified that in the mid-'60s they'd certified Stanford, and he'd done it as a meteorologist. This is a guy in like World War II flying into typhoons. I mean, he's a real trailblazer. It's like almost, I think it was 90 when I interviewed him. I think he's still alive, but yeah, this was like 6 years ago. And, you know, the point with Livingston was they could control, steer, create hurricanes in the 60s. So it just shows how far this stuff's come. Let's go ahead and go to that clip.
My name is Ben Livingston. I'm the first person to ever see a cloud with the intention to cause it to do military damage. I know I can say that, and I did it several times before the next person did it. We were doing quite a lot of testing work out over the test range at China Lake, California, where we dropped cloud seeding flares or silver iodide generators into clouds or just where we wanted to see what the reaction was. And it was there when I learned for sure that you could really change a cloud by the amount of silver iodide you put in and where you put it. These are cloud seeding dispensing units on the side of C-130s. As you can see, these units held 52. These dispensers held 52 units. We were the first ones to fly into hurricanes for the purpose of modifying them, if you will. That was Project Storm Fury. I began to be extremely confident that we could do whatever about what we wanted to with a hurricane. So Project Storm Fury had been going on since 1961, and they had already done, or had done 2 experiments, one in 61 and 63. Well, by 1964, when I was there in 1964, I wrote the plan and started to have a track and a mission for every flight that was on the hurricane cloud seeding experiments. So we had documentation for everything. Operations at Project Storm Fury are very positive. This report said that we claim they should consider now.
Okay, that's just a short excerpt from an interview I did 6 years ago with Ben Livingston, the father of weather weapons. We're just demonstrating this exists, the cloud seeding, how they do it, moving right along, back to Aaron Dykes, because this is all going on, and you're supposed to just worry about football all day or what Lindsay Lohan's doing. I'm sorry, because what they admit they're spraying is brain damaging the population as neurological disorders go off the charts, as the honeybees die, you name it. Aaron Dykes, continue with your report while we show some footage of videos we were sent from around the world of the geoengineering program.
But Alex, you said this is brain damage. You guys remember this is all for global warming. It's for our own good. And so you've got all these seemingly wacky proposals to shoot air balloons that spray stuff in the atmosphere, to have little ships that float on the ocean and spray stuff in the atmosphere, to put a hose up into the atmosphere, to have solar reflective things and orbiting the Earth in outer space.
They're just setting the precedent that they control weather.
Yeah, and you've heard them talk about how they want to control the space for the 21st century fight. This is all part of that. It's cloaked under national security and this global warming excuse. And among their other crazy plans is this albedo's plan to inject particles into the atmosphere and the stratosphere to reflect the radiation. Now, that alone will cause a disruption with the radiation forcing, which will change the weather perhaps in unpredictable ways. They know that, but they're still pursuing it because it's their best cover
Chemtrails is only one part. They've got the magnetic field generators, they now admit, in China, Dubai, other places, that are just copies of HAARP that are energizing the atmosphere.
But naturally, people have seen the stuff sprayed into the sky, asked questions about it, and as they're proving correctly, want to know more. Well, it all falls under this albedo's plan. I know we have all these clips here about global dimming and about how shooting sulfur into the atmosphere is going to help that process, and it goes on from there.
But isn't it more trendy just to be into acting cool? I mean, why should we even worry about this? Oh, here's some more articles. Yeah, the solar shield. Now that we've exposed this, oh, we are doing it. We're saving you. We've just been testing it.
Yeah, and they're doing it. And here you see Bill Gates. He not only wants to steer hurricanes, but he's funding the plan to shoot stuff into the atmosphere.
Yeah, none of us have property rights. None of us don't have a right to not breathe this because the little control freak chicken neck eugenicist who daddy runs Planned Parenthood says we're going to breathe it.
So you see again and again academic papers about modifying clouds, creating artificial clouds. You can read them for yourself. You've got preventing global warming by increasing cloud albedo. This is just a few selections because, as you saw, there's literally hundreds of documents. But here, Paul Crutzen, he won a Nobel Prize, and he's very much at the forefront of this whole thing. He's talking about albedo enhancement through stratospheric sulfur injection. He admits they're going to shoot sulfur particles into the stratosphere and atmosphere to try to cool the planet. And that's one of the main proposals that's tied to this spraying from the planes, because you've also got this one from Jay Gorman about how the stratospheric injection of aerosols can be done with fuel additives, aviation fuel additives. The paper describes the selection and preliminary testing of chemicals that might be used as aviation fuel additives to inject these products, sulfur dioxide and micron-sized silica particles, into the stratosphere from commercial or military aircraft. They admit they're testing it, and when it's tested, they have...
Well, this whole program they call testing, well, when is it coming up where they admit they mix it with the jet fuel, the patents?
This is the one right here. Atmospheric testing could be started almost immediately. Separately, there's other patents where they kind of sketch out ways that they can mix powder and create contrails, such as this one.
Here, guys, let's hit pause on that. Incredible job, Aaron. You've really overdone it as usual. You're calling this just the tip of the iceberg. This is quite an iceberg. Yeah, here's some of the patents on the jet engine and how it disperses the sulfur dioxide, the aluminum dioxide, so you can enjoy the massive increases in neurological disorders now plaguing everyone. And this is an InfoWars article from just about a year ago, back last December. And then it lists all the patents, 1619183. 2045865. I mean, folks, don't.
I think there's literally a couple hundred patents.
Yeah, I mean, don't. Listen, spend your time. I know TV said it was a conspiracy theory. Why don't you go to the U.S. Government Patent Office? I mean, really, learn.
But then people are going to nickel and dime that this wasn't the one they chose to go with. The point is, they have massive amounts of researchers.
The point is, they admit they're testing it. When we learned the name of the passive aerosol program, we found out it's huge. It's going on. All I know is 15, 16 years ago, trails didn't sit there all day. They admit our Earth's dimming from this. Incredible, Aaron. They bring up this made-up crap about global warming or any climate change is unusual, and it's really just their excuse when you get deeper in the documents for weather warfare against the third world. But just like Obama's the peace president waging war, it's just a total cover story.
Yeah. I mean, for example, they were going to shoot laser particles to blast away the CFCs back in the late 80s and stuff. I mean, take, for example, this out of Porton Down, where somebody wrote asking about the open-air release of zinc cadmium sulfide in the 50s and 60s, and they say, yeah, we're sorry, but the military reserves the right to open-air test really anything they please.
Yeah, that's U.S. Code Title 50, Chapter 32, subsection 1520A. Let's show a document cam of this. Here's over in England, and they go, yeah, we spray deadly stuff on you. Yeah, we spray deadly stuff on you. Suck it. Die. We fry little foster kids in microwave ovens. You bet. Now die, sheep. Pay that tax money. We love you. You don't love us, you're a terrorist.
The whole global warming thing falling apart at the seams. The cover story's busted on that, but they still want to push this geoengineering thing as a solution to a problem a lot of people know is phony. Now, the whole point is they've had hearings in the U.S. and the U.K. on regulating it, and they all call for global solution, and it's all mirrored off of the same proposals that funneled through the Council on Foreign Relations, through various universities.
Club of Rome back in the 60s?
Yeah, and a handful of scientists like David Keith and Ken Caldera have been steering this through all the different science groups, getting hearings, but always just pushing for let them test, do not ban, and let's have global coordination. Let's cue up the clip now where the Holdren plan correlates with the CFR plan.
Obama science chief eyes drastic climate steps. Thank goodness he's there to save us. Of course, he says he wants to reduce world population by at least 80% and put chemicals in the water to sterilize us. Obama's plan to geoengineer the planet mirrors CFR policy documents. I mean, aren't we lucky we have these guys? I mean, he says he wants to kill us. It's very nice of him, though. But I guess he can't kill himself yet because he has to carry out the plan first. It's very nice of him, though. And he's so incredible with Bill Gates. Yeah, there's the CFR plan, unilateral engineering.
These are the same plans with everyone. Shoot reflective particles into the upper atmosphere, add more clouds in the lower atmosphere, place reflective objects in space. Extremely expensive and stupid.
But then we're not supposed to notice any of this going on, though.
Change the terraform of the Earth. Change the shading of things on the Earth.
But notice, Darren, the old-timers 18 years ago did the testing in the atmosphere and said these exact chemicals. And then they were proven right, and it's going on, and the Earth's getting dimmer, and the neurological disorders are going up, and we've covered in our report that Paul did, all the universities, people saying aluminum's going up, we don't know why, and all the soil. And then after we expose all this, they go, yeah, we're doing it for the Earth, but the details are classified.
Well, that's good if they dim the Earth. They're more intelligent than we are.
Well, exactly. Well, they know they like to kill us. I mean, they said so. We're scum.
Yeah.
Well, they're really killing us, but it's kind of a nice little thing. They're saving us, Aaron.
But that's the gravy, I think, is you've had stuff like...
You're not loving like they are?
Kucinich, among others, wrote the bill back in 2001, calling to ban and restrict exotic weapons, including high-frequency weapons that allegedly also didn't exist at one point, as well as, quote, chemtrails, the little buzz
But we did
term.
show the defense secretary admitting they have them.
But now they are holding hearings on geoengineering, which does exist officially now, and they're telling us how good it will be when they regulate it globally, Alex, either using the places that already exist through the United Nations or creating a new...
But I drew a smiley face on it. It's loving.
Well, if we can play the clips now about the international global accords to hold hearings on geoengineering. Government report calls for global authority on planetary geoengineering. That was Steve Watson reporting on it at Prison Planet. And it just gets into all these hearings.
There's the actual report.
Yeah, this one's from the UK, the House of Commons, regulating geoengineering. Sounds like they're really going to do something about it.
They're going to make sure they're allowed to spray us with aluminum.
They go on to explain how they have a joint agreement with the U.S. and that their committees have gotten together and agreed on geoengineering. They recognize there could be dangers, of course, Alex, but they need an international regulatory arrangement for geoengineering, as you can see here. And
to make it all legal that they're killing us and cutting the water off to Africa and Latin America. Yeah.
And then here how currently it's not subject to regulation. They admit there's no regulation to the testing going on right now. That means they're doing it, Alex. If you read between the lines.
No, they admit they've been doing the testing. You can go pull up thousands of reports of it. But again, none of these documents exist. It's all a pipe dream.
But here's the regulations. More international regulation between the U.S.-UK deal. Here's from the House of Commons. They talk about the transboundary implications of dealing with these new technologies.
But as the CFR said, we'll just do unilateral global.
Yeah, well, they'll do both.
And they got drones bombing everybody anyways in countries, killing them. I mean, why not?
They can't ban it or create a regulatory framework because the technology is not sufficiently predictable. And they explain, too, how cloud seeding will be included in this, and they're going to have to come up with a legalese definition for geoengineering. And again, what I'm showing is different reports that all call for international agreements. This one out of the Congressional Research Service. They had all kinds of different...
No, this goes on in the real world, and then we're all supposed to watch CNN and Fox and hear Glenn Beck make fun of us and tell us none of that exists. Kind of like there wasn't a Bank of the World or a CFR or a Bilderberg Group. Now they admit it all. But the global government's to save us, Aaron, run by the very banks that implemented it all.
And, of course, you know who's pushing all these genetically modified crops, the stuff they're pushing on
sterilize all the animals that eat them, and we see our fertility dropping. But, again, these are nice people. I mean, they openly write papers about how they want to kill us. We should just trust them. I mean, everything's fine, Aaron. They have all these patents where they're mixing it with the jet fuel. I mean, so what? These are good people.
There's so many documents, it was really difficult to narrow
see, that's
down,
that last video was a contrail versus a chemtrail. See that? See, the real trail is dissipating. Amazing. Aaron, we're almost out of time. We'll do a part 2 on this. This is incredible. Run through the rest of it.
Well, that's all I have for today, really. But you can see where they admit the Earth is getting more dim by a significant amount.
What do you have in this little box?
Just hundreds of other proposals, academic papers, a few more patents.
But it doesn't exist?
A few more government hearings.
I mean, if you even question them geoengineering and say, gee, 18 years ago, the trails didn't stay in the air. Now they do. And gee, scientists went up in their own planes and tested it. It's aluminum dioxide, barium salts. And jeepers creepers, the government admits they're doing tests with these very things 18 years later. But we're not good because we were proven right. We're bad. Batman.
It's about getting global approval to live your life, and that includes...
Well, I'm just thankful to all these chicken neck control freak eugenicists spraying my family with poison. Thank you, Ted Turner. Thank you, Bill Gates. Thank you, chicken neck Holdren. Thank you, Dr. Eric Pianka. All of you eugenicists, thank you for all your evil and your control freak. I mean, you just see human life, and it's the ultimate control freak thing. You just got to screw it all up. Thank you for all you've done. I suggest you line up first to get rid of yourselves. Oh, but you won't. You have to be guardians of the mass murder. Aaron, in conclusion, this is about toxifying the soils and coming out with GMO crops that can only live in it. That's all admitted. It's about having derivatives that bet on the weather and then they actually rig it and control it. Control casino. But it's mainly, as the memorandums you showed at the start, it's about population reduction. And they've said, if you don't pay your IMF World Bank dues, even if you don't owe it, we're just going to shut your water off. And our public's going to watch football games and praise torture. We'll just say you're Al-Qaeda when millions of you starve to death. You understand? Pay us, we own you. And now they're taking the bank accounts of the American people. That is coming up with Joe Salente. And I guess, in a way, we're actually the bad people. 60 seconds, final summary.
Yeah, you remember the Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns blocks out the sun so he could sell electricity. It may not be the exact same thing going on here, but it's similar. They want to control all the important elements of the atmosphere, of our environment, of our lives, of our right to reproduce. Yeah, they want to kill us or make us pay to live, basically.
But we're lucky we have them. Aaron, take us to break. Salente's coming up. The beekeeper's coming up.
Look, there's a lot more. We're going to
another extremist who's sad the bees are all dying. I mean, another part. It'll be good when the bees all die. The bakers know best.
Yeah.
Why not spray the little bees with aluminum?
And because they figured out a few things with DNA, it makes sense to modify our food and grow it in labs.
Well, see, that's the plan. After they kill everything, then they come back and re-engineer life with a patent. And that's what even Monsanto said about 12 years ago.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Well, what's wrong with that? These are loving people. Hey, you wonder why your 25-year-old wife's dying of breast cancer? You wonder why your 3-year-old's getting a Parkinson's type disease? You wonder why cancer's up 3,000% in diabetes? Because these people are murdering us and they like it. And they think you're obsessed with football and your pedophile football leaders and the rest of them. And they think you're too weak to wake up and realize these psychos are attacking you. You know, people always think that tyrants are going to look like the last bunch. They're not going to look like Fidel Castro or Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin. They're going to look like John P. Holdren and David Rockefeller. You can either wake up to these tyrants and recognize them now, or they're going to win. I tried my best. Just an average Texan fighting hard. Incredible job to the crew, incredible dedication, and great job to all of you out there who support us. We couldn't do this without you. Get this video from InfoWars Nightly News at prisonplanet.tv and get it out to everybody. They're openly moving to start shutting down the web, as we covered earlier. This transmission must get out. If you're listening to us, you are the resistance. It's now up to you. I hand you the baton. You catch it. It's up to you. I can't do it without you. We're in this together.